I would like to welcome Katie Hoff Anderson to the Quiet Time podcast and the Benny Fowler YouTube channel. Katie, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm very good, very good. So let's dive right in. You are an Olympian. Please tell us about that and what that is like to represent your country and, just how you got to this point. Let's start like what that feeling is like.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I think you appreciate further on in your career, or even now when I've retired. I think when I was in the midst of it, just going after making the team, breaking records, doing this, doing that, you're in such a one-track mind of next, that you don't really appreciate the magnitude of that, of being an Olympian and what that means. And now I look on TV and I see, them promoting Tokyo and the Olympics and how that's viewed. And I have a lot more pride, I think, associated with that.
I mean, that is incredible. The fact that I'm talking to Olympian right now, that means a lot to me. Just because, I used to run track when I was younger and, you go to the Junior Olympics and things like that. And it's like, all right, these are like the fastest guys here. And you're a swimmer, right? Yeah, you're one of the best swimmers in the world. And how many records have you broken?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. In terms of American records, I've broken probably, I'd say 10 to 15 American records, and I've broken 3 world records.
What? This is incredible. So what is that feeling like to know that you are a world record holder and an American record holder?
That one is pretty cool. Yeah, I think my first one, it's this feeling that like everything has come together, all the years of work. I mean, it's that one moment where the stars align and all the blood, sweat, tears, everything that you put into it is actually coming to fruition. It's actually paying off. And, I think you can see in people's celebrations, I always get so emotional when I see other people's celebrations in big moments like that, because I've been there and I know just what that feels inside.
That's awesome. So did you always want to be an Olympian? Was that always your goal?
From about the age of 10, I remember going around and telling people that, which people, of course, are always like, yeah, that's great, sweetie. But I think, I started breaking state records when I was 10 years old. And at that point, it was like, okay, I, first of all, suck at anything on land. Like, asked my husband, I can't throw a football. I can't run very well. Like, it's just not meant to be. So swimming was it. And I just felt like that was my calling, and I started kind of putting all my eggs in one basket. And pretty much from 10 on, I certainly didn't expect to make the Olympic team 4 years later when I had said that when I was 10, but it was always a goal from a very young age.
Shout out to Todd Anderson, a good friend of mine and a teammate of mine at Michigan State who Katie is married to. So shout out to him. So you made the Olympic team at 14 years old.
I just turned 15. Yeah. So baby.
So at a young age, did you understand the importance of goals, or who helped you set goals and help you reach those goals? Obviously you had a lot of natural talent, but you had to have a vision and clarity. And, I want people to understand on the Quiet Time podcast, we talked about the importance of leadership, having direction, and that success looks so different in so many different ways. So who helped you set goals when you were that young?
I feel like it was a lot of my parents kind of just hopping on. I was always a very, I would say, neurotic little kid where I was very driven very early. I was the one making sure that we went to practice. My parents always gave me the option. They're like, hey, if you don't want to go, you don't have to go. And that was never something that crossed my mind. I always wanted to do more. I was always striving to the next thing. And I think the biggest blessing with my parents and my coaches is they just supported me and bolstered me up, and they didn't put too much pressure on me. And as I got older, I definitely had coaches who saw that my intensity and, goal setting abilities, and would just sit down with me and really plan that out, so that I had a really clear path to success.
So I heard you just say your coaches, as you got older, helped you plan that out. Can you talk to the audience about the importance of actually writing your goals down and actually having a plan. Now, obviously, plans can change over time, especially, look at a situation that we're in right now with the virus and things like that. How can you talk? Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the importance of writing those goals and having that plan?
Definitely. I think ultimately, and I talk about this a lot too, it's practice and becoming an Olympian or becoming, an NFL player requires a lot of consistency. And with that comes the ability to embrace the daily suck that is training hours, being in pain, sacrificing things. And if you don't have a very specific goal written down that's in the top of your mind constantly, you'll probably give up. Like, it's so hard that if you don't have you're want to give up on a set, you're breathing hard, you're dying. And without that, you're like, why am I putting myself through this? I must be a masochist. Like, why am I doing this to myself? But that always came true for me when I literally had goal times written down up on my wall. So I saw them in the morning when I got up at 5 a.m. I saw them at night when I went to bed. And I had them on a whiteboard they were everywhere around my house. And, I think obviously finding what works for you are you someone that likes to write things down? Do you like hearing it? Whatever works for you, but you've got to have constant reminders slapping you in the face on a daily basis so that you continue to drive forward and understand truly why you're doing what you're doing.
That's incredible. So where did you train at? Did you train at Michigan when you were getting ready for
I grew up, I was born in California, and the path to meet my husband is a windy one. So okay. I moved to Virginia when I was 5 to be closer to family. And then my dad was just commuting to Maryland a lot when I was about 13 or 14. And at that point, I had kind of outgrown my team a little bit, and we were looking to move to MBAC, which is also where Michael Phelps trained. And I had actually met a training partner that was a female, which as you get faster as a female, it can be harder at that age to find a lot of training partners. And so that was a big draw for us. So my family moved to Baltimore, Maryland when I was 14, which was the year out from the Athens Games, and clicked right away with the coach, clicked right away with my training partner, and kind of didn't look back from there.
Did you train with Michael Phelps?
I did. So the funny thing is, I get that question a lot. I did it prior to 2004, or even leading through 2008, because Michael, as you know, which I'm not allowed to say Michigan, but Michael went to Michigan for a small period of time and trained there with Bob Bowman. So I actually didn't train with Michael until 2009, which was a year after the Beijing Olympics. So I was at MBAC, but not training with Michael.
Wow, that's incredible. What was it like, seeing him train and his work ethic? Obviously, you're already very determined and very driven, but sometimes when you can see somebody who's at such a high level, even though you were at a high level, it can inspire you even more, being around I get inspired by dudes who are younger than me in the NFL just because some of the things that they can do, I just can't do, which I'm okay with. But obviously, you being an Olympian as well, you're already at the top of your game. What was it like to see him train?
Yeah, the thing that I think I always tell people about Michael is his ability to drive consistently each and every day to a very high level is one of the reasons why he's the greatest. There's just this thing in his brain that I think he has the, real strength to snipe in and not let it go. And I think that comes at meets, it happens at practice, but he did some crazy things in practice that I think a lot of people, they see his highlight reel, they don't see his behind the scenes, but his behind the scenes is pretty epic.
Wow, that's awesome. I wish I could have seen that, just around. And,
we toiled through.
Yeah.
Toiled through some rough ones together.
So talk a little bit about some of the bumps in the road and how you navigated through that, because obviously, to be successful, it's not always a straight and narrow path. You're going to have some ups and some downs. Can you talk a little bit about some of the down times that you had and how you were able to get through those? Because, a lot of success is not just like this. It's all over the place. Like you said, on the path to meet your husband. And so, it's all different spots. So talk a little bit about, some of the downtimes you had and how you navigated through that.
Yeah, so the first one definitely came at a really young age. So I kind of had to grow up pretty quickly. So I made the Olympic team in 2004, as we talked about, like a baby, no idea what I was doing, never been on a national team, never been out of the country, just very much shell-shocked. And you dream so long to make the Olympic team. Well, when you make the Olympic team, that means then you have to go and swim in the Olympics. And I wasn't equipped or prepared or had the confidence to do that. So I had a very traumatic first race. I ended up holding my breath and not even breathing in the ready room. Ended up having a terrible first race, throwing up all over the deck in front of thousands of people. Yeah, it was a disaster. And I had to really at that point pivot and at that point give up, or pick myself back up and keep going. And that's why I'm so passionate about talking about the goals, is I still had the goal to be one of the greatest, to break American records, to break world records. And I didn't want to let that one setback, even though it was on a public stage setback, get me down. And so I remember going back and talking with my coach, and we always really address process. So I know I've heard you talk about that a ton. He sat down and he was like, all right, well, we're going to train so hard and do a set so grueling that the 400 IM, which is one of my best events, doesn't scare you anymore and you can conquer it. And that's what we did. We attacked that year right after, and I broke my first American record. I won my first world championship the year following that traumatic, downswing and failure.
That is awesome. And I think that's incredible just because you didn't give up. And the fact that you attacked it and you had the help of somebody else, but the fact that you attacked it as a person, that just says so much about you, because you could have easily just been like,
forget this.
This might not be for me. But instead you attacked it, and you attacked it so hard that it made the other event easier, that made the same event easier for you the next year. So I think that is really incredible. I had a similar situation, not, I guess, in my sophomore year. Yeah, maybe my sophomore year in high school, my first varsity basketball game. I go to the free throw line and I go to shoot a free throw, and it's not even close to the rim. I was so nervous.
Oh, no.
Things like that. Those are the moments that define us as athletes.
Mm-hmm.
You see the thing with Michael Jordan, getting cut from the basketball team, Tom Brady getting drafted in the 6th round. It's not about where you start, it's about where you finish. And I think that, you have that mindset, and I think people will learn from you even more. So that's a perfect way to segue into, you're getting ready to become an author.
Yes.
Congratulations about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, so you kind of set it up. Everything you were saying, you're like, it's a windy road. Everyone has a plan, but you have to deviate from the plan. So my story that was just one example that I gave of, having some highs and then having some lows, and really having things not go according to plan, not how I saw, when I was 10 years old, imagined things would be. And so the title of the book, first time I'm saying it, is called Blueprint. Okay. So Blueprint is obviously, architects use it as a design plan. And I truly believe that everybody has a blueprint in their life. Maybe some have more details filled out than others. And as I mentioned, at 10 years old, I had my blueprint. I had, this is how my life's going to go for the next 20 years. I had all these things figured out. And as architects find out, most times they need to adjust, they need to revise the plan. And that's truly what I needed to do in my career was pivot, embrace the suck, reassess. And if I hadn't done those things, I truly believe that I wouldn't be as successful as I am today. And so it's really about my story through the ups and downs, and how I, transitioned from being, a professional swimmer to, the new chapter of my life in the corporate world. And it's really not really meant to be like a self-help book, but more of my memoir, and hoping to inspire people to be extraordinary.
Well, congratulations on the blueprint. And I know it's going to inspire a lot of people. And, I know we have the same speaking agency. So, yeah, I know you're going to be speaking on that. And that is going to be an incredible book to read. I can't wait to read it. So that is awesome. So I want to say congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Because, the book company that I use, they say a lot of people, 90% of the people write the book and don't even publish it. So,
Really?
some people have that fear, so, you talked a little bit about how you got over fear and you attacked it. So how else did you attack fear as you became older and understood certain things and confidence? And, what was your process like going into a meet? Obviously you trained super hard and you had your goals, but, what was your daily process? Because I think it's important for people to understand is the goals are important, but it's your system of habits that lead to the outcome that you really want.
Definitely. I think for me, I always had this mentality. It started daily with, okay, here are my goals. And then it's, if I'm standing behind the blocks and I feel like there was even a moment in time in practice that I didn't fully put 100%, 110% and maybe, eased up a little bit, I didn't want to have that feeling of regret. Like I always wanted to stand behind the blocks, and I always call them Hall of Fame sets. So I wanted to be able to have my 3 Hall of Fame sets that I did in practice where I can stand there and be like, yeah, I did those. I attacked those. So I've got this. And most of my confidence came from those practices, those sets. I was never someone that could just get behind the blocks, dive in and just pop something off. I wish, but it just wasn't who I was. And I'm actually grateful for that because it taught me a lot about, process and goal setting and really being consistent in my effort on a day-to-day basis. And I think that obviously carries over to really any endeavor that you're doing in life. But that's where all of my confidence stems. So if I was going into a meet and I had a really rough, kind of season of practices, it was not going to be good. And I almost knew that in advance, which was tough, but it just meant that I had to be that much more dialed in the next season.
You're really polished. This is awesome. I really appreciate this interview and, you being on the Quiet Time podcast. So for young swimmers out there, young entrepreneurs, leaders, anybody who wants to be successful, you've been successful at the highest level. What are a couple things that they could take away from you that you would love to just share?
I would say number 1 is being relentless. I think that that's something that's said a lot, but understanding what that means is really, really important. And it goes back to continually defining your why. I think my why throughout my career changed a lot. I had to stop sometimes, reassess, redefine so that it continued to make sense in my life and what I was doing. And it's impossible to be relentless if you don't have that drilled in and dialed in. And I think that's especially for entrepreneurs. I mean, the amount of times that you have to fail and fail forward and figure it out that way. If you don't have that quality, you're not going to ultimately be successful. So I would say, that those two, being relentless and having your why, I think once you have those things, the rest of the things fall in line. And then also having like a really great support system. I don't think I would have been able to keep picking myself back up had I not had, parents, coaches, my now husband, behind me, understanding me and allowing me to go through, some grieving processes, understanding who I was away from the sport. That part is extremely important. You cannot do this by yourself, and you've got to find those people that get it and get you.
I love that. And you just said something super important, surrounding yourself with the right people. For the athletes out there as well, you said something about identifying yourself after the sport. And I think we see athletes sometimes do that, and even business men and women. Sometimes they can only identify with who they are, what they were doing. How did you navigate through that?
That was a rocky road. I won't lie. You go through 20 years of an identity where so much of Katie, the swimmer, and Katie, the person, are very much intertwined and tangled. And you don't, like you're not sitting there in your sport when you're driving towards a goal saying, okay, well, what else am I good at? Like you are one track mind, you are focused on the goal and you're going to accomplish that goal. And so I was taken out of the sport, unfortunately, kind of on not my terms. I had a pulmonary embolism in my lungs. I had 2 blood clots. For those of you who don't know what pulmonary embolism is, because I didn't. And I was forced to retire. And it then really forced me to take a look at myself and say, okay, well, who am I without swimming? Who am I when people don't say, oh, you're that Olympian girl? And that's really hard pill to swallow when 20 full years have gone by and that's what you're known for and that's what you identify with. And similarly to, like you said, a business person that goes through 20 years of career, is successful, people know them as that, then it's like, okay, now what? And it's taken me probably 5 years now to really get to the point where I can openly publish a book. I can openly speak about my career and the ups and the downs. And I think it's understanding what the 20 years or what the vehicle provided. And for me with swimming, it was feeling like I was making an impact, feeling like I was inspiring others, feeling like I was extraordinary. I always go back to that word extraordinary. And that's what really allowed me to push forward and, dive into speaking and dive into doing more clinics because I found that extraordinary again.
That's awesome. And self-discovery and personal growth is something that I'm super passionate about. And, I think a couple weeks ago, I was talking to somebody and they're like, well, who are you after football? And I'm starting to identify myself, I'm still playing, but I'm starting to identify myself as not just Benny Fowler, the football player, but the champion. I can be in sports and in life, in business. You can be a champion. You're being extraordinary. You weren't just an extraordinary swimmer, you're an extraordinary person. And now you're in the corporate world, extraordinary author. And I think that's important for athletes and also business people to understand is that swimming was what you did. It wasn't just who you are. So I think, that's very important for people to understand. I just want to dive into a little bit of a leadership portion, because you are in a sport where it's, primarily focused on you, but you are the leader of your life. Can you talk a little bit about, your leadership role and how you had to lead your life? And, leaders have to connect with people. So you said surrounding yourself with the right people. How did you go about that? And how did, your understanding of leadership, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that's something that, you obviously have coaches and that person in your life is that leader, right? And so you learn good things from them. You maybe learn, opportunities from them. And I think really where I probably learned the most was through mentors. So finding people that kind of had an unbiased view that could weigh in, that I would go to, that would bounce things off of. I'm very much a person, like I cannot keep things inside. I'm very much of an extrovert. I need to talk it out. I need to get it out. Sorry, Todd. It's very much my process and how I work through things and develop as a person. So I found probably, you don't need a lot, but 2 or 3 people in my life that really taught me those qualities of how do I communicate with people? How do I, talk through things? How do I, talk about a next step? How do I interact with my teammates? All those things that you think are just so simple, but they really do take development and growth as a person, as an athlete. And I think as I transitioned out of the sport and into more of a corporate world, I learned those skill sets even more. But again, I found advocates and mentors that I really looked up to and admired to learn that next set of skills. So I'm a big, I guess, supporter or believer in always having that 1 to 2 people in your life that you look up to and you can lean on. Like, again, you can't do this by yourself, and to think that you can just suddenly develop these skills that are very difficult to maintain and develop is just not realistic. You've got to find those people.
Yeah, I think that's super important. I always, especially getting into the entrepreneur space and keynote speeches, and I have to lean on other people who've done it before, because it makes my road a lot easier. So, if you want to just leave the audience with a key tip or something that you live by and where they can learn more about you, the floor is yours, Katie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So you can learn more about my journey. I have a website. It's kthoff.com. I have a lot of my videos and podcasts, as well as my book will be there. And then my book is going to be coming out in late fall, early winter. So really looking forward to the release of that. I'm really, really big on my social media as well. So it's kthoff7. I document my dog, my little Frenchie, my workouts. I like to put up favorite quotes of mine. And that's a lot about really what I talked about today, about being relentless, feeling extraordinary, finding your why. Those are things that are near and dear to my heart and things I really, really believe in. And so if you want to keep up with that, you can follow me on that.
Awesome. Katie, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate that. You were an incredible guest. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good.